Well, hello and welcome along to Wilson and Windsor's Libertadores podcast. One of the very, very few podcasts in English that exclusively concentrates on the grandest, greatest competition in South American club football, Mr. Wilson. And this week, well, we were not in South America, not in sunny South America. We were in cloudy, an undisclosed location about 45 minutes north of London in cloudy Great Britain. But nonetheless, we were not deterred because we carried on chatting all things Copa Libertadores. We've had the qualifying stage of the tournament and the group stages are set. There's some great groups as well. As always, there's some stories, there's some subplots. There's a lot of gaps in our knowledge that we need to fill in, Ollie, when we see all these football clubs play their 6 games in the groups. But we covered everything, really. We talked about the group stages. We talked about qualification. We gave our predictions. We talked Roque Santa Cruz, Gachado, Gus Poyet, and so much more. Wilson, this was also the first pod that we got a few. It doesn't do it justice. We've got a nice little, we've got a great video setup. So yeah,
well,
mate.
What we're doing is we're doing this very socially distanced in that we've got you at the very far end of the table.
We'll just cut out the handshake we had before the pod.
Yeah. Fist bump or elbow or whatever it was. I'm a little disappointed you've given away the fact we're not in Argentina because the backdrop that you've got with the Bombonera just behind you, the Libertadores trophy that we now have will be a centerpiece at some point once we sort it all out. And obviously the radiator with some aftershave and a cleaning cloth on it as well. I mean, it's just, it screams traditional Buenos Aires. So no, it's
beautifully chaotic.
It's nice to do a podcast face to face again.
Man.
I've not done that for a long time. And it was great fun this week watching the fallout from the qualifiers and getting stuck into what is going to be a really interesting Copa Libertadores this year because there are a number of teams that you could put in as favourites and who's going to win the competition, which we didn't actually do. We didn't select our potential winners for it.
Oh, that's true. I was just about to say that I felt we had more questions than answers in this pod because this is always the case, isn't it? When you look at the groups and you're thinking, oh, what's that? How's that going to work out? This and that. You're right. I think last year we gave our prediction for who was going to win it. And we gave our top scorer prediction as well, maybe?
Yeah, we did that, and we didn't...
Do you want to do it now?
Start the whole podcast? Okay, yeah, we'll do it. Who do you think is going to win it?
I'm going to say Flamengo come bouncing back, and Gabigol is top scorer. I'm going to say let's scroll a little back to 2019. They're going to do it again. There's too much quality in that group for them. I don't care, that there's been a lot of transition. The fact that they've gone through managers really quickly and now Senny's in charge. The quality in that squad is better than anyone else on the continent. And for footballers alone, they will come to the fore and they're going to win the 2021 Copa Libertadores. You will say... Oh, go on then, Ollie.
I mean, look, if certain people go certain places, as we discussed on this podcast when we got round to talking about a certain team from Buenos Aires, then my lock-in is there. As I was let down by Boca Juniors last year, I'm not going to be taking them. I feel like I should take one of the Brazilian sides. I'm just not sure who to take outside of Flamengo. And I don't want to be riding on the same bandwagon as you. So I'm going to say, just because I've been impressed with how it's gone through the qualifiers, I could see Santos making a real run and going back to the final and then getting the job done. And yeah, Jefferson Soteldo is the top goal scorer alongside it.
Love it, Wilson. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the pod. Yeah, man. So enough talk about Bobby Lee and Tiger Belly and Kalila, and we'll get stuck into the football, Mr. Wilson, yeah?
Sounds good to me, mate.
He's happy with that. The 2021 Copa Libertadores. Sounds futuristic, my friend.
Well, we've finally got here.
Yeah.
But it feels also because the last tournament was not so long ago that it finished. You know, Palmeiras haven't had any time to celebrate their victory.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're in this world now where, like, there are no gaps in the football calendar. And now we've established that the footballing world can function with absolutely no gaps in the calendar. It's hard to see how it ever goes back from that. You know, prior to the pandemic, there were still 6-week gaps, 3-week gap here and there if you were lucky, if you didn't go to an international tournament. And now that's kind of been taken away through circumstance in the pandemic, and we've condensed all these tournaments in South America and Europe closer and closer together, and we're playing more and more football. I don't see how we go back from it. I think it's just more and more football until it pops.
Well, you know, they can't handle that in Brazil at all because they've got round-the-clock football anyway. So if the Libertadores takes that sort of attitude as well, and maybe, you know, like a lot of competitions, they expand it or do something like that, Brazilian sides are going to really struggle and go from being like the supposed dominant force on the continent to being left legless. And they have huge squads anyway.
Well, that's it, though, isn't it? Like, if you've got 30 players, then that's how they sort of play every 3 games. It's insane. I guess a good place to kick things off, Ollie, is Group A. Oh,
I was wondering. I've got a few little overall things just quickly.
Beautiful. Fire them at me.
Well, before, obviously, we had the qualifying rounds finished this week. Before that, we already had the groups ready to go. At that point, we had 14 previous winners in this competition already this year, combining altogether for 33 total titles, obviously because teams have won them on multiple times. Then you add that with obviously those that have qualified, so we lose potentially a few with Grêmio, but we add one with Atletico Nacional. We've had 2 winners in the last 16 years not being Brazilian or Argentinian, which is, you know, something to keep an eye on because I think we've discussed before that we want a little bit of a change on it.
Colombian and... I'm just thinking the last 16 years.
Colombian and maybe Ecuadorian? No, probably not.
Not Uruguayan. Not Bolivian. Not Venezuelan. Not Paraguayan.
No.
I think it might be 2 Colombians.
I'd like to check it out, but I've got so much stuff
go,
on me around here.
Go.
And then we also, no repeat winners, of course, since 2000, 2001
Boca.
with Boca. So we're starting with Group A. So if we're going with that sense, Palmeiras, are they one of the best sides who have the best chance to repeat after?
I love the fact that no side's retained it since Boca in 2001, Ollie, because I do think it's the mark of a really good tournament. And I remember when no side had retained the Champions League for so long, of course, then Madrid did it a few times on the spin. I always think it's a very, very good mark of the tournament. Yes, you just talked about Argentina and Brazilian sides dominating it, but no defense of the title for 20 years is impressive. Are Palmeiras going to do it this year? I don't think so, no. Not to jump straight into it, but...
well, I've got a few reasons why.
Go on then. Why they are going to do it?
No, why they're not going to.
Go on then.
I think... No, I'm going to leave it for the end of our Group A discussion.
Leave it, sure. Let's talk about Group A then, Wilson. It's the best group. It's the most exciting group. Palmeiras, Defensa y Justicia, Universitario, and Independiente del Valle. I mean, certainly on paper, when you look at it, the most storylines and subplots, I think, in Group A. And the most quality. And
potentially the most attractive football we'll see out of any group. Having watched a lot of Defensa y Justicia last year in the Copa Sud, under Hernan Crespo at least, they played wonderful football. They've had success under Sebastian Becasese, who's come to retake the reins once again after his incredible achievement last year, knocking out Flamengo with Racing. Independiente del Valle have been a joy to watch already in this tournament, and we've waxed lyrical about them. Palmeiras, at their best, play wonderful football. Universitario is one of the biggest sides in Peru, so we will see what comes with them. There's high expectations, but it's a tough caliber of opposition to ask them to really take on.
Should we talk about IDV, Ollie, just because they're the side that kind of got their place? I don't know whether just the mention of Independiente del Valle makes Ollie Wilson smile ear to ear, but I said in IDV, and he's just smiling, was just generally a happy man.
I just love them.
Yeah.
It's weird that you pick like a niche team to get into a bit, cool, and it pays off quite well. It's rare for me anyway as a Sheffield Wednesday fan.
No, but it's really, really nice. And I think I mean, I'm not even sure you can call them underdogs anymore. But let's just talk about how they got here, Ollie. Because on paper, certainly, in the qualifying stages against Gremio, I mean, that looked to be such a tough test between two top sides with very, very good recent history in the competition, of course, Gremio. So the fact that IDV came through that was magnificent. We talked about the first leg in the previous pods where they were so impressive, kept their cool, kept their identity, despite going 1-0 down in that first leg, which is really impressive. Faravelli was awesome in that first leg. But we talked about it last week, so we could talk about the second leg against Gremio. I mean, even more impressive in many ways, going there and winning 2-1. Wilson. And I know Gremio did have chances. We talked about this a little bit off pod, actually, about Diego Souza. Had a very good chance at a key time. But the ability of this IDV side to reinvent itself, it's such a sustainable model for the long term. You know, it's not based on a certain group of players, even though clearly the players they've lost were crucial and it's going to be hard to replace them. But just the fact that you can watch them and they're playing a similar way, they're playing with a similar kind of confidence. You know, losing Torres as the focal man, absolutely huge. But Montenegro coming in massive. Ortiz stepping up. Peixarano, nearly 40. Still sitting in there doing a great job. So, I mean, and Faravelli, of course. So, I mean, Ollie, you hit me. He's itching.
Let's get that smile back.
No, talk to me about IDV.
No, I mean, obviously, you've lost Caicedo as well.
Sure.
That's the two key figures going forward for them. They've still maintained, though, a fair bit of the defence, and there's still a lot of the defence left over from 2019's success in the Copa Sudamericana. And we've mentioned it. The ability to change personnel, including a manager, yet still retain a style and still retain that ability to bring young blood through. That's the thing I'm most excited for, to see, though, particularly the two most impressive youngsters in William Pacho as the defensive anchor coming into the back line, and Pedro Vite in the heart of the pitch as well. It's a tough ask, but he has that safety blanket of Peixarano, the experienced man, alongside him, which in theory gives the 18-year-old now a really nice cushion to be far more relaxed and get advice during a game and just play the football that he wants to play. So I think that with Independiente del Valle, combined with the fact that Faravelli has come in, he scored goals already. Christian Ortiz, his finishing was exceptional against Gremio.
The second goal in the second leg. I mean, it's such a quality two-touch finish. It's absolutely awesome. I think it's probably my favourite goal of the round. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the set piece is up there as the free kick he scored as well, because it's that difference of the right footer from the right-hand side of the 18-yard box, bending it awkwardly back in towards the keeper, so he keeps it so close to the left-hand post of the keeper that there's no chance, even with it coming back towards him, that he can save it. It was just two great goals. The difference as well, perhaps maybe more positive for Independiente del Valle to go one better in terms of they've built from the Copa Sud. They got through to the knockout stages last year and fell short in the round of 16. But there are players in that side that played last year and will learn from that. And there's still that enthusiasm and that hunger. I have no reason in my body why this team isn't a potential semi-finalist.
Sure. Well, I mean, reached the final in 2016, so you look at the last 5 years, just amazing. I was going to say then, Ollie, is this, if it hadn't happened before, is this the year then that we're just banned from talking about IDV as underdogs or dark horses or minnows? That ship has sailed, hasn't it, I think now?
I think that's true for this bunch of players. The only thing is that I don't think it's ever going to be a sustainable ability for the club because of the way it operates as a team being able to move on players and bring more youngsters through. You're going to hit golden patches every so often. We've seen that with the likes of Manchester United and Barcelona in Europe. And Independiente del Valle might just be the South American equivalent of one of those patches, but they aren't a big enough club to retain and hold on to all of those names for long enough to build something really special. But they will have flash-in-the-pan moments like these last 2-3 years where there is an opportunity to do something special and see what happens. So, I'm really looking forward to see them. But they've got a tough group because Palmeiras, Abel Ferreira. Do you not worry a little bit with Palmeiras? And I was just looking, obviously we saw that they lost the Recopa to Defensa y Justicia, albeit down to 10 men in the second leg, and then lost on penalties, a cruel way to lose it. Lost on penalties as well, though, in the Brazilian Super Cup to Flamengo, who were the league winners. All the talk is about they did the incredible treble last year of the regional tournament, the Copa do Brasil and the Libertadores, but it was a weak, I would say, league campaign for them. and it's been a weak start in terms of big competitions straight away. You know, the Brazilian Super Cup and the Recopa aren't treated lightly.
Sure.
So to have been crushed in a cruel way in a tough group going into the Libertadores and the pressure of repeating, is there a lot being asked of them and perhaps they're going to fall short?
Well, a lot's going to be asked of them very quickly, right? So, you know, we've spoken before in this tournament about size. It's true of any tournament, I suppose, but I feel like the Libertadores more than most because it's stretched out over the course of the year, but it's still knockout football, right, Ollie? So I think you see River do it every year. They just ease themselves into the tournament. You don't have to play well in the groups. There's a point here, a point there, a loss there. It's still fine as long as you win a couple of games, pick up 8 or 9 points and you go through. But Palmeiras just aren't going to have that luxury this time around. They are. I'm just looking at the fixtures now that Palmeiras have got. I mean, however you look at it, even Universitaria, who, obviously they played so many times in the Libertadores, got such great success in Peru domestically, was it 26 titles? So they're not going to be easy either, but Palmeiras just won't have the time, I don't think, to ease into it. And yeah, the Recopa's going to sting as well, really sting. I mean, that's a mark of Defensa Justicia, who'll be right, who they'll be absolutely buzzing after what they did in the Sudamericana very, very recently as well. So yeah, Palmeiras won't have any opportunity whatsoever, and there's a reason that sides haven't defended it, but that is a tough group.
It was interesting as well. There were a lot of people in the kind of the previews that I've been reading of the Libertadores this year saying Palmeiras swept past everybody last season and looked like a juggernaut. And we said so many times they didn't feel like a juggernaut. They were great against River in that first leg. They were great against the minnow sides that they played in the knockout round, and they had a pretty easy group that included... No, that was Santos had Defensa Justicia.
I mean, that was a long time ago now, the group stages for last year.
Yeah. But they weren't tested that often, and they almost fell short against River anyway in the semi-final. So they got it right in the end in a fairly drab final in the Libertadores. But to say this is a juggernaut that could tear through everybody again, I think is really naive to go into this Libertadores thinking that way, even though they've kept the bulk of this squad, thankfully. And on paper, you would say if this team can win it last year, they can win it this year.
It's still a really good group of players, yeah, for sure. I don't know. Do you want to do predictions now or at the end of the?
Well, let's do them
as we go.
At the end of the group discussion.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because that'll give me a bit more time to make my mind up about Group A as well because it's tricky. Group B, Mr. Wilson. Olimpia, Paraguay, Internacional, Deportivo Táchira, and Always Ready. It's a poor group. The weakest.
Arguably the weakest.
Group F as well, which we can talk about a little bit later. But
there's a couple of slight stinkers in the Libertadores this year. It's not one that's going to be attracting a hell of a lot of attention. The main battle is Olimpia against Internacional in who is going to top that group. And I still have my reservations about Internacional in terms of performing when it matters. When you look at how they let the league title slip last year in Brazil, that's quite damning on them. And this is an Olimpia side that will play with a lot of confidence in this tournament because they are used to being in the Libertadores. And look, we've got the last swan song of Roque Santa Cruz retiring at the end of this tournament.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned him, Ollie. I've got a bit of trivia on him. No, I was going to say with Olimpia, you're right. I mean, I've got 3-time winners, 4-time runners-up apart from that. So as a football club, there's no doubt that they've got that massive experience in the competition. Last won it in 2002. And then Inter won it a couple of times themselves. I was covering Bayern at the weekend, Ollie, right? This is actually just going to be more of a fact than trivia because you've mentioned Roque Santa Cruz's name now.
Oh, sorry.
And that was kind of the punchline. But so Musiala is the Bayern player. No player under the age of 19 has scored more goals for Bayern Munich than Musiala.
Okay.
Except for
Roque Santa
Cruz, yeah. And when he was when he was a teenager at Bayern, he was banging them in. And I was like, that's really interesting because Musiala's really, and to be, for Bayern Munich to be scoring goals as a teenager is awesome. And I'm glad he's got. I saw he's going to retire at the end of this season when he's 40.
Yeah,
which is a nice
40-year-old.
But Adebayor, no more.
No, that was done and dusted almost before they were out of the group stage last year.
Blinking your miss
in out.
Yeah. He saw the pandemic coming a while off. He was just like, let's get out.
Not in South America. I'll get home somewhere.
Long gone.
Sergio Ottoman, who's taken control of Olimpia, is actually somebody who was in that 2002 side that won it. So there's a feeling of like a club legend is coming back with them coming into this competition. Jorge Resaldo was the team's top scorer last year. And from what I've gathered, there's a lot of discussion about the quality of youth in their side. But I think Olympia are going to be a real tough test for an Internacional team that, as I say, just have a bit of a feeling of being a bottle job, albeit with Miguel Angel Ramirez at the helm, the former IDV manager. And he came in March, so he's not had much time to get to grips with them when they were going through the latter part of the league campaign. Maybe it could change in the Libertadores.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I got Ottoman as well. Won it as a player with Boca as well. Do you think it makes much of a difference if you won it as a player in the Libertadores? Or do you think it's something that just sounds good? Like it is, you see it and you think, oh, that's a really interesting nugget of information. I'm sure that, that experience as a player is going to somehow manifest itself into good tactical decisions. But I mean, or is it just irrelevant?
When you're doing the story, the narrative, it's great. And when you think
for an intro
of how he's going to get his players to focus in difficult points, he can draw upon experience of being in crunch moments in this Copa Libertadores. He can use that as an inspiration for when I won it, we knuckled down in that semi-final against San Lorenzo and like draw on that. So I think there's a nice way that you can kind of spin it to make it work.
Yeah. Well, the other two sides in the group, as you alluded to, Wilson, it would take a big upset for one of those two to finish in the top two and qualify for the knockout stages of the tournament. I mean, Always Ready last competed in the tournament in 1968 and had never won a Copa Libertadores game, which isn't great. But I know they did well in the Bolivian league last year, and then Deportivo Táchira. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I knew loads about them. I do remember, Ollie, them playing in the qualifying stages last year and covering those games against Independiente Medellin, who came through comfortably in the qualifying stages for the group stages last year. So
the Táchira frequently in the qualifying rounds. They are the team that has finished second in the Venezuelan league more than anybody else in that country. 9-time runners-up.
And last year as well, against Caracas,
Yeah. So it's a little brutal on them sometimes. Their league top scorers last season were only 4 goals apiece, which I think is quite worrying.
Sure.
If you're a Táchira fan or a neutral looking to back a niche side, this probably isn't going to be one of them. Always Ready, only their second appearance in the continental competition as well. It's inexperience, perhaps going to hinder them. Being Bolivian is definitely going to hinder them because we know how weak that league is. It's going to be an interesting battle, perhaps, for third and who goes down into the Sudamericana.
I noticed, which is, it's always, Defensa Justicia last year, Ollie, as well. If you finish third and go into the Sudamericana, it's just an awesome opportunity to go deep in that. I was just going to say that the Deportivo Táchira manager, Juan Tolizano, is 36. And obviously, I'm getting older, you're getting older, we're all getting older. But I'm always uncomfortable now with managers. Like, when did it become a thing that managers are in their 30s? Like, I've made my peace that I'm not going to make it as a professional footballer, right? So then when you see professional footballers, you get
still holding out for that managerial role.
But I don't know. That is less depressing for me now. And like a 19-year-old comes in and scores, or like we'll talk about Santos later, but Angelo, becoming the youngest scorer in Copa Libertadores history, we spoke about last week. But so I'd made my peace with not making it as a player, but then to see sort of managers that are not a dissimilar age to me, like Nagelsmann, he's probably going to join Bayern. I don't know. It's a little bit unsettling.
Definitely, the pro sporting career potential is fading very quickly indeed. Is what you're saying.
It's basically.
A quick one on Always Ready as well. So they were being managed by Sebastián Núñez until about a week ago. So what happened during, obviously, COVID, the Bolivian season got messed up. Manager Omar Assad came in on a 30-day contract to play 12 games in 30 days.
Amazing.
Which is what got them, which won them the league.
0 hours.
Assad won them a league on a 0 hours, 30-day contract.
That's how we live our lives as freelancers, 30-day contract.
Well, and this is why it pays to do a good job first time round, because they didn't bring Assad back. They brought in Sebastián Núñez this year, and about a week ago, ditched him, didn't like the results that they were getting at the moment, brought back the league winner. brought back Omar Assad. So he's now at the helm once again. But for a team that's called Always Ready to have such a balls up in terms of dealing with their manager just before the start of the competition, I thought was wonderfully ironic, at least.
Nice. I thought we'd run the Always Ready jokes dry, but it's nice. There's a different angle on it.
There's more to have. Don't worry.
Group C, Ollie. Boca Juniors, Barcelona of Ecuador, the strongest, and Santos. It's another really tasty group, isn't it, I think? Especially after, and we can start with Santos, I think, because Santos came through the runners-up, of course, last year, and came through the qualification phase to reach the group stages this year. And I know we're both pretty excited about this Santos side. So youthful, so exciting, really, really impressive in qualifying that you feel they could have another good run.
Without doubt. They've been better particularly in the qualifying rounds this year than a lot of what we saw last year in the competition. Albeit, it's still the qualifying stages. Perhaps the intensity isn't quite there at that point. But considering the standard of the last games in the final round of qualifiers, to see Santos get through that so comfortably and so convincingly, and it is the youth that we've mentioned already this season coming through, and it's incredible to see 17, 16, 18-year-olds playing so confidently at this level. I know you're not a fan of even seeing them on the field, Windsor. You'd have these, these child labour.
Get back in school.
Child labour laws being enforced even more.
Get back in school and open up a textbook. No, of course. We should say they beat San Lorenzo over 2 legs. The 3-1 win in Buenos Aires really impressive, and then at home, kind of the 2-2 draw. So I cut you off mid-flow there, Ollie. You were just about to talk about the youth, because I've got plenty to say about that in terms of Angelo becoming the youngest player in Copa Libertadores history. Awesome. But it's just the whole side, isn't it? Like, did you see Marcus Leonardo's goal in the second leg against San Lorenzo? First of all, I don't know if he meant it. I mean, if you haven't seen it, check it out. All the Copa Libertadores goals can be seen free on YouTube, can't they? So, but Marcus Leonardo...
Not all of them.
I love that as a joke. Very good. That's a great sidebar, that was. Marcus Leonardo, so he's 17, and he's just like at such an impossible angle against San Lorenzo in that second leg. And he scores his first Libertadores goal. I mean, I don't think he means it actually, Ollie, because the angle's so acute. If he's going for it, I just don't think... I don't think it's a crazy angle. But they, they were 2-0 up and San Lorenzo pulled a couple of goals back, but it was all done by them. But it's not just Angelo and Marcus Leonardo, who's 17. Sandri's a good player. Caio Jorge's, he's still a teenager, I think. Yeah, Who else do I really like?
Still 19.
Yeah. Felipe Jonathan's, I think, is a really good player. Parra, for experience, I think he's 35, 36, balances it all up. And I haven't even mentioned, the keeper, who's also awesome, and our man Jefferson Soteldo, who's 23, 24, something like that.
Jefferson's old news at this point. 2020 was Jefferson Soteldo's breakout year on the continental stage. Now
he's boss.
I mean, to an extent, though, there is a case... I mean, I didn't even think of that before the podcast, but there is a case of now it's Soteldo has to be a leader rather than being is he going to break out? Same with Mourinho. Is he going to be the next disciple coming out of Santos for football around the globe, perhaps? They've been there and done that and not quite got the T-shirt. Now it's time for them to lead these youngsters and get them up to that same level. And it was impressive in the qualifying rounds, but it's a tough tournament. It's a fairly good group for them. Depends how much you buy into the hype of Barcelona. But for Santos, they'll be looking at this and thinking they can get out of this with the youngsters they've got, as long as those leaders come to the forefront.
Yeah, with Barcelona, Ollie, I just wrote down Damian Diaz. Like, if you got a chance to watch him play, if you want to watch a footballer that doesn't run, then try and catch Barcelona in Group C in the Copa Libertadores in 2021. He just doesn't run. I mean, he's a walking footballer, and there's not many of those around. I think away from home, you may as well not play him. You're playing with 10 men. But at home, if Barcelona can get a little bit of the ball, he's bags of fun. So keep an eye out for him. No,
it's all good. So we've just had a notification coming on my phone. So we've actually got Pedro in the podcast today, and it will come up on the video.
Oh, awesome. That's very cool. Our man, Pedro.
Yeah.
Flamengo
cool. Pedro.
That's awesome, man.
In terms of in terms of Barcelona, Damian Diaz is... I mean, walking football's become quite good for the elderly, and he is pushing the years on now at 36, so maybe he's looking for a future to get that big Ecuadorian walking football league going. Sure. There is quality elsewhere, though, and he doesn't need to run that much when he's got Brian Castillo, who, if you remember from the qualifiers last year, was exceptional at bombing down the right and supporting the attack, and he really is still one of the highlights of this Barcelona side and the squad going into this. Javier Baray is fantastic between the posts as well. He's a very good keeper. 16 clean sheets last season, which is impressive indeed, considering everything that was going on. So, for everything about Damian Diaz's slow pace, it's a high-tempo, fast-attacking football team. And the real question is, are we lulled into believing that they can do what we thought we saw them do in the qualifiers?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel likely, does it? Boca and Santos in that group. Before we talk about Boca, the strongest also there. I mean, they're sort of always there in the Libertadores group stages, I think, more or less. They've got the altitude of La Paz. They're still going to look at that group and be, they're not going to be favourites to qualify. And you'd think that would be Santos and Boca. Boca, anything to say about the strongest, Ollie, or should we chew into Boca Juniors?
12-time league winners, 18th appearance in the competition. Have had a very bright start to the domestic campaign with 14 goals in their first 4 games. But again, that is the domestic campaign, and it's always difficult on the road. Daniel Vaca, 42 years old between the posts.
Jesus,
that is an old keeper.
That's an old keeper.
What happened to mobility?
That's an old keeper, isn't it? 42, yeah. 27 appearances in Libertadores history. So yeah, I mean they're always there or thereabouts.
And obviously, almost 12,000 feet above sea level.
Always a biggie.
Just to get that in.
Always a biggie. I got beat the strongest. Jorge Wilstermann did the strongest last weekend in the league, and as you say, in good form. And as for Boca. Is this the year? I mean, you back them every year, Wilson, so you may as well back them this year as well.
Back them 1 year. Back them 1 year, and they get to the semi-finals. I mean, and we were all thinking they were going to get past Santos as well. I was looking very good in the run into the semi-finals last year. Look, there's an element of stability with Miguel Angel Russo still at the helm. It's not been the best start to the domestic campaign this year, but it's all about the Libertadores. It always has been, always will be. They're chasing number 7, joining the king of cups, Independiente. By the way, when we get onto Nacional, they claim that they are the true king of cups, the king of kings of cups, apparently. Okay. We'll get onto that later. But yeah, they need that front man. And over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of rumours that Edinson Cavani is due to sign on with them.
I mean, if that happens, I mean, Manchester United to Boca, I mean, if Edinson Cavani joins Boca Juniors, then they win the
whole tournament.
Well, I mean, he's still absolutely quality.
Yeah, no, it's game over. They've got the defensive solidarity still.
Sure.
And they've added Marcos Rojo.
Yeah.
And then they'll have Edinson Cavani to devastate all in front of him defensively.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. I mean, it's not going to happen because those things don't happen, do they?
De Rossi went there.
But De Rossi was on the way. Like, okay, Cavani's pushing on, and I think that's a different. You might have got me there, Wilson. But no, I think Cavani's it's a different step up. I think for a striker who's still banging goals at the top level in European football to go to Boca at this point. There's so many other European clubs that would pay massively increased wages, not to mention MLS, all those kind of options.
MLS would be the one that would certainly be like, well, if you're going there, come to Austin FC or Atlanta.
Sure.
Rodney Redes at Austin providing.
So Ramon Abela's gone.
One choppe.
Yeah.
No more.
Carlos Teva's still there, 37. Boca, as you mentioned, Ollie, 6-time winners, but not since 2007, which we said last year, and the feeling from Boca fans is that's too long.
Too long now, yeah.
It's kind of a figure now. They're reaching the semi-finals all these years, but they've got that 2007 in their mind. And they still haven't wiped away what happened against River in the final because they haven't won it since then. So that's still going to be very much present. Really, really disappointing against Santos in the semi-finals last year in that second leg where Santos just just really ripped through them, and Soteldo was star of the show. So yeah, Miguel Angel Russo still the boss. It's going to be, he was the man that won the Libertadores with them in 2007. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
It's about finding the guy for Villa and Salvio to provide the service for, isn't it? Now, I mean, it's just a missing piece that they've had missing for a couple of seasons.
Sure.
And they got a league victory, but it's not going to be enough in the Continental.
Yeah, we'll see if Cavani goes there.
God, it'd be so good. Wouldn't it be so good if Cavani putting on a Boca shirt on that Libertadores night, regardless of what's going on in the pandemic, you'd have to open up the Bombonera.
Would you?
The atmosphere.
Well, open up anyway. I mean, so just as a sidebar on fans and grounds, I mean, we were talking about the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, the stadium that first allowed a full capacity, yeah.
Well, certainly the first. I think like Russia's at 70% capacity. Obviously, we're not going to count zero COVID, Australia and New Zealand and stuff like that. But for kind of countries that are just dealing with the pandemic, for better or for worse, I think, yeah, as I said, Russia at 70%. But that was a statement from, and I don't know my American sport like you do, Ollie, and I'm not saying that a packed Bombonera is a little bit different to how many, 20,000 Americans?
I can't remember exactly how many are in there, but it's a big old stadium.
Yeah. But it was awesome to see, wasn't it? And I think it caught, if you're a sports fan, and I don't know anything about the Texas Rangers, baseball, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, baseball. And I know baseball's not actually your main American sport, is it?
Amazing to listen to this. Yeah, baseball, isn't it? The one rounders, with the stick. With the stick.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, it was just great to see fans in a stadium again. And listen, it will come back. It might take, I don't know, another year, but it will come back. You can already see it in Europe, Ollie, with Euro 2020, which is of course being played in the summer 2021. UEFA asking for commitments for fans to be in the stadium, and already, I know the Dutch, the Spanish, England as well have already committed to having fans in. So it is going to come back. It's just there's a lot of the problem with it is you need a lot of organisation. There's a lot of boxes to tick, forms to fill out, temperature checks, lateral flow tests, and I don't quite know if South American football's geared up for that.
Probably not at this point.
Sure, and obviously they're being battered by kind of numerous waves of the virus, but it will settle down because it's what it does.
That was the COVID interlude before Group D here on the Wilson and Windsor podcast.
We had a 25-minute COVID chat pre-pod anyway, so yeah, we got the solution to it. Yeah. Group D, Wilson, River Plate, Santa Fe, Fluminense, and Junior. It's another pretty interesting group. I mean, obviously your eyes go towards River as, 4-time winners in the past, and 5 out of the last 6 or 7 years they got to the semi-finals. Marcelo Gallardo is still there. This will be the last year because this sees out the contract. So many players have gone in recent times. Prato and Scocco, and before that Palacios and Quintero. Nacho Fernandez, though, feels like a biggie. I know he was quite poor in the back end of the Libertadores last year, but it feels like a biggie.
Yeah, Nacho and Quintero. I mean, Quintero eventually wasn't used that often, but a wonderful talent to have at your disposal. Both of those two are the ones that I've circled as departures. They're the biggest. I mean, even Lucas Prato is another great utility player up front who's out on loan at Feyenoord at the moment, likely to return at the end of the season, but won't be available for a large part of the group stage, for the group stage. So, yeah, Nacho's departure is more than frustrating, I think, if you're a River fan, and I think if you're an Argentinian football fan as well, because for him to not go to Europe but to go to Brazil, almost with the €5 million tag on him, I kind of think, why was there not a European side looking at him and thinking maybe we can
his
make
age?
Something? Yeah, but if it doesn't matter the age if you're good enough, and
also now more than ever, there's short-termism in the game, right? As clubs are just trying to squeeze through the pandemic. So, yeah, I mean, you would have thought a European club could have taken a punt for 6 months or 12 months, but it's gone to Brazil. That's where the money is. I don't really blame him wanting to secure, financial security for the next 2 or 3 generations of his family if they're smart with the money. So I don't begrudge him that. And River, even though they went out in the semi-finals last year, they probably treated us to the best game of the tournament in terms of the comeback, and they so nearly did it. So, yeah, I mean, River are going to, as long as Gachado's there, they're of course going to be one to watch again.
Brought in the really exciting Alex Vigo from Colón, who was...
You've been talking about him for a while.
Yeah, he was exceptional in the Copa Sudamericana run that they had a couple of years ago. And, I mean, there was a wonderful moment when we were covering that final where Joel Richards on CoComs, we were waxing lyrical about him, and he said, he's going to be one of those players that could potentially, come to Europe and try and make a claim of playing in a European league somewhere. And he gives the ball away, and Jon Sanchez breaks in behind in that space and scores for Independiente del Valle to make it 2-0, just as he'd finished saying that. And
happens,
it was like,
man.
The commentators curse or what? But he is a very good young right back. What that means for Montiel is and his future at the club is very interesting then. And Jonathan Madama, I think I'm saying that right?
Yeah. Madana,
35, won the Libertadores with both Boca and River, has come in as a bit more stability as well defensively. So
and I was just also going to say, as long as they've got, of course, Gachado, but as long as they've got Borré and Suarez as the top two.
7 goals to start the season, Borré already. I mean, that's a good start.
He's fantastic, but Borré's been fantastic for years. His quality, I mean, had that brief spell in Europe, still must be, I think, 25, 26. So that's another one that you think, couldn't a European club have taken a punt on him? If you're going to create chances, Borré can score goals for sure. And Suarez as well, who doesn't get spoken about sometimes that much, I think, Ollie. I remember watching him and commentating on him when he played for Anderlecht way back in the day. And I really liked him then, and he's great. He's great for River. So if those two can stay fit, plus I know River have got some young players coming through, then yeah, I mean, they could go deep again.
And then we got the Colombian, both sides, Independiente Santa Fe and Junior, in this group that they will have to deal with. I mean, you saw a fair bit of Junior in the last couple of weeks. I saw a fair bit of them last season in their Sudamericana run after they dropped out of the Libertadores. Again, it's another year where they're expected to be a good side in this competition. And the one tagline that was thrown at them basically over the last 12 months regarding Libertadores and Sudamericana play is that they are never as good as all their parts. The sum is never matching all of their parts put together. And it's such a shame because you keep hearing about it and people in Colombian football waxing lyrical about the potential. And if it doesn't come to fruition, it kind of leaves a negative mark on your record, and people I think you get a bit more disdain if somebody bigs you up and you don't meet the standards. Whereas if somebody was like, Junior, they're not going to do anything, and then they finish third in a group, or, they get an unlikely away win or something, then you have a more positive feeling towards them. Yeah,
and it was interesting because I did, watched a fair bit of them through the second stage of qualification where they smashed Caracas 5-2 over 2 legs, and then of course they played Bolivar in the third phase of qualification before the group stages, Ollie, and we chatted on the pod last week where I quite fancied Bolivar to
not having any of that, none of that.
Sneak through, but Junior did the job, and I mean, mate, Miguel Borja, he's a really good striker. And if you give him opportunities, I mean, he the one he took in the second leg against Bolivar when they reversed it and won 3-0 was relatively simple. But there's quite a sweet combination between Freddy Hinostroza and Miguel Borja, and those two dovetail nicely. You've got Teo Gutierrez who kind of tucks in behind, and that really works as well. So there's quality there, like the goalkeeper as well, Vieira. So yeah, I mean, Junior, I think they're looking at that group and they're thinking, Santa Fe, Fluminense, like we can finish second here.
Yeah, the devil in terms of Santa Fe. And Fluminense, yeah, it's interesting in terms of they are what looks like a very young squad. Statistically, there's been a lot of young players actually playing in the regional tournaments. They've got another Kaiki. This one plays in the forward line though, 17 years old.
This one's going to Manchester City or similar, right?
Apparently, yeah. I mean, by all accounts, he is a really promising youngster to keep an eye on. Marcus Martinelli as well in the midfield, and John Kennedy too as a forward. All of them have been heavily involved in the regional tournament at the moment. All of them expected to play in this Fluminense side under the guidance of Roger Machado. Fluminense though, again, another side that have disappointed when I've watched them in the international competitions. They against Peñarol in the Copa Sudamericana a couple of years ago, that looked like it was going to be a titanic clash, and then they both kind of just fizzled out a fair bit.
And it's a name that outside of South America you've heard of, right? Like as in Fluminense. It's like you think...
I don't know why, though.
Yeah, it's an odd one because historically, the runners-up in 2008 in the Libertadores Fluminense, it's not kind of a great history in terms of this platform. But yeah, if you're a football fan but you don't follow South American football and someone says Fluminense to you, you're like, oh yeah, you get it, whereas you might not with some other clubs that have had similar quote-unquote levels of success.
Yeah, I mean, like a Botafogo wouldn't stand out to the regular football viewer compared to Fluminense, but I mean, this was something when I was doing the research and preparing for this, I was like, why? Because I've known them for a very long time, like probably since I was quite young.
Is it the shirt?
Yeah, I mean, it's an iconic combination. The white, purple, and green. It's an awful combination as well. But yeah, it might be that. It might be because Fluminense and Flamengo basically often get mixed together.
Is it like Flamengo or Flamengo? We know the biggest club in Brazil, the most supported club on the continent. So is it just that kind of the spillover really from Flamengo and the fact they have that rivalry that makes them that makes them well known to. Well, not well known, but makes them certainly recognised to those outside the South American football sphere. Maybe.
And Santa Fe, again, more youth in the side. There's apparently, from what I've been reading, a very good centre-back pairing of Jason Palacios and Fernan Torrejano, which is very useful for a side that tend to be very front foot forward. I mean, it's kind of nice. A lot of these teams, when you go back and look at how the style of football they play, it's very attacking and aggressive. So then having a solid centre-back pairing like that gives you such a good anchor to prevent being devastated on the counter-attack when other teams come at you.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen loads of Santa Fe, but I was reading some of the stuff as well, and Simon Edwards, the Colombian football expert, just said they're fun, which is always like a great adjective to describe a club that you haven't necessarily seen loads of, so certainly be keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, but aside from that, there's not much more on Group D, really, except for picking who's going to go through. We'll do that later on. But yeah, I think it's an open one before we get into who we think is going through. I think that second spot is very much up for grabs.
And Group E then, Wilson. Sao Paulo, Racing, Sporting Cristal, and Rentistas of Uruguay.
The rookie Rentistas.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, yeah.
Can we just start with them and Sporting Cristal, because we don't need to donate that much time to either of these two sides. Not to be completely dismissive of them, but Rentistas in their first appearance in this tournament won the Apertura last year and then finished in the very bottom of the Clausura and almost were relegated, and instead ended up finding a place in the Copa Libertadores because of the way that Uruguay has finished its season. I mean, if there is ever a side that screams it's probably out of its depth.
I was going to say, we won't give them much time now, Ollie, but then when they get to the semi-finals, we'll be saying, we saw them, we saw them back in the day.
Well, they were always a side that I've had a real affinity for back when we were covering the Uruguayan league down at Perform,
Sure. And then Racing and Sao Paulo, who, I mean, just on the face of it, you'd fully expect them to come through. And Sao Paulo's going to be fascinating this season.
Hernan Crespo at the helm, Rui Costa is the club's director, or the GM. They will be wanting to avenge last year as well, because they were so disappointing in the end last year in that, albeit a tough group with River and Liga de Quito and Binacional, but I mean, they lost in Peru against Binacional, albeit the altitude and everything impacted, but it was a Sao Paulo side that were back in the Libertadores and then looked completely like they were just carried away with just being in it rather than being prepared for it. And I don't think Hernan Crespo is going to make that mistake. He's had the experience of last year with Defensor Justicia. He's had the experience of winning a continental competition in the Copa Sudamericana. They played Defensor Justicia great football. If Sao Paulo can emulate that, and Crespo again has had his time now after coming in, February, to take that role, to get used to this squad. No Pato, Dani Alves still there as like the talisman, I suppose, and Eder, the Italian forward. Yeah. I mean, never had like a massively promising career, but a good name to have and a good signing up there.
We spoke about Hernan Crespo a lot, I think, back end of season 2 of the pod, Ollie, with obviously what he accomplished with Defensor Justicia and then winning the Copa Sudamericana. And I was actually I was watching an interview that he did for Inter TV the other day, Hernan Crespo, and he was talking about his adjustment to living in Brazil. And I thought it was a really intelligent way. He was talking about it so holistically about, learning the language. And it was really interesting going to all these different places and seeing different parts of Brazil. And I thought it was just really mature. And he sounds like he's really bought into the whole experience. And we said before that there's not much loyalty either way in football. So, he bowed out at the top at Defensa Justicia. Probably the right thing to do. That doesn't mean in 6 weeks he doesn't get the sack, though, at Sao Paulo, does it? I mean, that's the nature of the game. But what's success for him, do you think?
Getting out of this group is imperative.
Of course, yeah.
That's the one that he has to achieve.
Sure.
I think Sao Paulo will be expected to make a really good fist of it. Crespo's got a good squad there. They brought in Luis Orejuela from Grêmio and Cruzeiro, where he's been the last couple of years.
Good player, yeah.
They've started brightly in the regional tournament as well, so it's it should be there for them to get through this group and go further. And I mean, it's great that you talk about Crespo like that. He never had problems as a player adjusting to the different countries that he played in. Does show maybe a sense of maturity that he is. I'd be really keen for Crespo and Sao Paulo to do quite well. Racing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good group for Racing. It's a really good group for them, I think. That they'll be fully expected to beat Sporting Cristal and Rentistas of Uruguay, who we're gonna delve into them before the games coming up in the first phase of games. But I mean, Racing will really expect to go through. You'd say. I know Becasese has obviously left the club, so it's a bit of a transition. But yeah,
it'd be interesting without Becasese. The fashion sense on the sideline is going to be very low indeed.
Suboptimal.
Juan Antonio Pizzi is a very very experienced manager, should I say? Thomas Chankalai coming in as well. It's a wonderful addition to the front line. Again, another one of the Colón side. Was young, off the bench a lot in that Copa Sud, but when he did come on, he made a very good impact. Was an awesome player to watch. So that's a great addition to their squad. Lost Lisandro Lopez. Unfortunately, there's been like a fair bit of change at Racing over the last few years, last 12 months or so. They obviously lost Zaracho last year to Atletico Mineiro, and we'll see him back in this competition. So the attacking lineup, potentially a few question marks over it. But Racing will, again, in the group they're in, second place quite comfortably, at least.
And then, I think we can, kind of rattle through the last three groups, really. I mean, Group F, Nacional of Uruguay, Universidad Católica of Chile, Argentinos Juniors of Argentina, and Atletico Nacional of Colombia. It feels open, that one, and I think I said earlier that I felt Group B was the poorest, but actually, Group F maybe. I mean, I know there's Atletico Nacional came through qualifying. I know they've won it a couple of times before in their history, but is Group F the weakest group, do you think, of the lot?
It's tough because, there's a couple of pretty weak groups in these last few. I mean, Group G's pretty solid. Group H, I don't think is necessarily great, considering I don't think personally Cerro Porteño have actually done that much there.
Sorry, Ollie. No, I was just going to talk about Atletico Nacional in because they came through qualifying to reach the group stage of the competition. Actually, so Libertad won the first leg 1-0, and then took a really early lead through another teenager, Enciso, to make it in the second leg. They took the lead, so they were 2-0 up in the tie, and they were in such, Libertad were in such a good position, and Atletico Nacional eventually came back to win 4-1. But Libertad did have an amazing opportunity through Ferreira at one stage to, I think it was at 2-1. So that, it might look comprehensive in the end, but really it wasn't. And it was very, very tight for Atletico Nacional to come through with a really impressive second half performance. They've got quality. Andrade's a good player. Palasa was lively. Alves leads the line well. Barrera tucked in behind. Certainly, if that's what I saw, just taken mainly off the basis of those of that return leg. They that's the quality they've got. So yeah, be interesting.
Yeah, they it's described as the greatest club of the world in history and the true king of cups in the world, being winner of 21 trophies, where most of its players defeated in the same year players from European clubs such as Real Madrid and Barcelona. Which may sound a little arrogant, I think. I mean, if we're calling Independiente perhaps not quite the king of cups anymore, that's another...
Oh, no, they still get that title.
But we're not giving the true king of cups and best club in the world. We're not allowing Nacional to have that one. Yeah, quarterfinalists last year, albeit by good fortune, I think. They don't play attractive football. That for me is one, for a neutral looking into the Copa Libertadores, they're not a side that you're going to look at and be like, ooh, this could be tasty. Sure. Alejandro Capuccio's come in this year, hasn't really changed the style of play that much from what I've seen so far. And I imagine they'll be relying on Bagresio for the goals in this competition, but they've been handed a very tidy draw against three teams that I think will probably end up struggling.
Yeah, it does look weak on paper, you'd have to say. Group G, Flamengo of Brazil, Liga de Quito of Ecuador, Vélez Sarsfield of Argentina, and Unión La Calera of Chile. Flamengo's kind of a club, Ollie, that we just haven't... considering how much we spoke about them, obviously because they went and won it, but it's kind of odd, really, how how ultimately they didn't manage to defend their trophy at a point where this time last year, more or less this time last year, in our preview pod, there was certainly, it was very, very hard to see how Flamengo, with that quality, weren't going to do something very similar.
Talk about sides trying to repeat the Copa Libertadores and how tough it is, but we were very convinced that Flamengo and that side should be at a semi-final stage, and the loss to Racing was caught everybody by surprise, albeit on penalties. And again, once you get it to that point, it's a complete lottery. But they weren't that stunning last season in the tournament. Rogerio Ceni's now in, and another new manager. It doesn't scream of stability in terms of what's going on off the pitch. However, on the pitch, it's still very much a lot of the core group of players that won it 2 years ago. So when you've got that talent in front of you, and it is a talented squad, there's absolutely no reason that Flamengo, once again, we can't look at and be like, well, this is a group they will probably get through, and this is a group that they can use as a launching pad to then fly off into the knockout stages and do very well. Yeah,
no. It is interesting that they have kept that. They have kept that quality. I mean, of course, Bruno Henrique and Gabigol as the two players that are gonna score all the goals and everything, but Dier Ascaeta as well, just absolute quality. Everton Ribeiro, I think, still there. I mean, they've kept all these players, haven't they? So who knows? If Rogerio Ceni can get a tune out of them, then it really should be one of the red hot favourites again.
And then you take in Liga de Quito, Christian Martinez Borja, the Ecuadorian top scorer last year, is going to lead their front line, and they're always a tough side to take on at any point. Liga de Quito, they're usually a good watch as well, particularly on home soil. Tough place to go and play, of course, with the altitude. And they've got a player on loan who's going to be taking on his parent club, which is always quite interesting, in Luis Amarilla, who is on loan from Vélez Sarsfield, and will take on his parent club in the group stage.
And I was just thinking about Vélez. Is their stadium near the airport?
Yeah, it's the one we drive past.
Yeah.
On the
yeah. Yeah. And Vélez making up the other side in Group G then. Final group, Group H.
Yeah, this is the one that I think could be as weak as any group, only because Cerro Porteño, they weren't great when they went to the knockout stages and got knocked out by River a couple of years ago. They were poor last year for a lot of it. And Atletico Mineiro, look, the standout side. América de Cali, again, were back in it last year after a long absence, and are a big side in Colombia. But again, they've now been given that tagline of a fun team to watch now, but they weren't that fun last year. And then, the Venezuelans, Deportivo La Guaira. Excuse me.
Guaira, yeah.
Yeah. This is Atletico Mineiro's group for me. Just the signings that they've made, as we've touched on them already with Nacho Fernandez, Matias Zaracho, who came in last year. They've got Hulk, Diego Tardelli, who was a winner with Mineiro back in 2013. Experienced in Eduardo Vargas, who's come in as well. Alan Franco in the heart of the midfield, former Independiente del Valle player. I mean, they're a very solid squad. And that's what actually Pedro, the Flamengo analyst, has said to us, that they've spent a bit of money, but they've spent money wisely on building a squad that could succeed. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know your thoughts on Cerro Porteño and how that...
My mind was, as soon as you brought up IDV, I was just thinking, you told me this. Where did Torres go, Ollie? Did he go to the MLS?
No, he's gone back to wherever he was on loan, which I can't remember off the top of my head.
In Europe?
No.
Okay. Because he was... Yeah, no. As soon as you mention IDV, it kind of it pops into my head like that. But yeah, kind of the further down the groups you go, the more you think they feel more open. And there's perhaps 2 or 3 groups where all 4 sides will fancy their chances. Before we go predictions, Mr. Wilson, you were about to tell me about where Torres has ended up.
Oh, he's playing in Mexican football.
That was it. You did tell me this as well.
Yeah, he's gone out to UNAM.
Yeah, okay.
Pumas, yeah. So that's where Gabriel Torres will be missing big moments in vital competitions. Yeah.
Group A, who's going through out of Palmeiras, Defensa Justicia, Universitario, and IDV?
Defensa y Justicia and Independiente del Valle.
Oh!
And I will tell you why. Palmeiras have a chock-a-block schedule in the next few weeks. So they have 14 games between now and the end of May, and April and May so it's hugely bunched with the regional tournament and this. And they start off away at Universitario, which they've already had a busy schedule at this point, so that could be difficult. They've then got IDV at home, away at Defensa, and then IDV. The 2 easiest games are the bookends of this tournament, of this group, for them. So I think that middle 2 or 4 games against those other 2 clubs could come at a time where they're quite tired and running out of steam and defending the crown as well. Look, I could be wrong. This is a bold prediction, but I'm just eyeing it up and thinking,
sure,
the Jekyll and Hyde style of Palmeiras and what we see from them, and then chuck in the busy schedule as well. It's going to be like that for a lot of the Brazilian clubs too.
I'm saying Palmeiras and IDV to go through.
Okay. Fair enough. What about Group B then?
I think unless you've seen a lot of Deportivo Táchira are always ready and can identify something that means they would usurp Olimpia and Inter, I mean, it's got to be those 2.
Either one who tops the group, does it matter to you? Or?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, doesn't matter to them, I don't think.
Group C.
What about you for Group B? The same?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you can't go anywhere else, can you?
And I think Group C, I mean, again, it should... I don't want to just go for the easy option, but it has to be Boca and Santos. It's so difficult to see how the strongest or Barcelona could get through. On
paper, it lines up that way. Like Barcelona, we bought into and were treated harshly with that last year. So, yeah, it has to be.
We hate them.
Yeah, they're dead to me now.
Yeah,
dead to me.
No, I agree.
Group D, this is tougher. This is a lot tougher. It's easy to say the Brazilian and Argentinian side. I think I might go Junior, though. Junior and River Plate, because of the experience in recent years in the tournament.
I agree.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I know. I saw enough of Junior in qualification this year that makes me think...
Making predictions off qualification always turns out really well.
Yeah, it does, and I know I also said that I thought Bolivar would do. But yeah, I'm gonna say River and Junior as well. Yeah,
cool. Nacional, Universidad Católica, Argentinos Juniors, and Atletico Nacional as well, who were fantastic in the second leg of their qualifiers against Libertad.
Skipped Group E.
Oh, Jesus.
Sao Paulo and Racing, I assume you were going to say.
Apologise, yeah. Well, another given, don't worry about it.
Yeah. But it is like that. It really does feel like that. And that's, you can't predict that Rentistas are going to find a way through. They may do so. Atletico Nacional, Group F then. Atletico Nacional, I wasn't impressed with them at all. I thought Libertad could and maybe should have put them out. I know it was a very impressive second half performance in the second leg from Atletico Nacional, but I wasn't impressed. So I'm going to go Universidad Católica and Argentinos Juniors to go through.
Ooh, okay. I'm not going to go with Argentinos Juniors. I'm going to take the Colombians, Atletico Nacional. And yeah, I think I could take Católica. There's still the experience. Fuenzalida, Luciano Aued to lead that team. There's a lot of talk of some of the youngsters coming through for Católica. You've got to love Gustavo Poyet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's go with, I'll go with Católica and Atletico Nacional. Another one of the qualifiers getting through.
And then Group G and H, I mean, again, correct me if you're gonna say something wildly outside the norm, but I think Flamengo and Liga de Quito and then Cerro Porteño and Atletico Mineiro to go through.
Vélez Sarsfield and Flamengo in Group G.
Okay.
I really liked Vélez last year in the Sudamericana. They've got a very good front three of Ricardo Centurion, Lucas Janssen, and Christian Tarragona. Orellano and Thiago Almada too in the heart of the pitch. Both very good. Orellano is a good youngster. And Mauricio Pellegrino as well, as we know, is a very good manager. So I would take them. It's going to be a frustrating one for Liga de Quito, I think. And then Group H, Atletico Mineiro. And then for me, it feels like a bit of a coin flip between América de Cali and Cerro Porteño.
I just like Cerro Porteño, I think.
They did give us that great atmosphere.
Yeah.
And there's always something
I like
about
the ground.
that, so.
And I mean, I'm not saying there are fans in there, but I like the ground. I don't know. I like the weight of the club. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with Francisco Arce and Cerro Porteño then. But it's Mineiro topping the group quite easily. So that is the group preview for the Copa Libertadores 2021 over and done, as the path to Gloria Eterna starts to be paved out. Remember, you can follow all of the Copa Libertadores action alongside myself, Ollie Wilson and Dave Windsor throughout the tournament, and get involved with us on social media via the Twitter accounts, Will Win Pod, that's Will Win Pod, and on Instagram as well, the same thing. And then David is, of course, David T. Windsor. David T. Windsor, such a overactive user of Twitter. You can't miss his content. It's everywhere. And myself, O_J_Wilson. O_J_Wilson. Like and subscribe and follow us on Anchor.fm, our host, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all those other places where you get your audio. And remember to hit the subscribe button as well if you're watching on YouTube. We will be back with all the action from the first round of the group stage next time.